Hare Krishna, everybody. Sorry for the delay. This is, I had to use this laptop, which has not been connected to anything, so I had to find the Wi-Fi password and WhatsApp and Zoom and everything, so sorry. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janardan Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta-vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, verse number 21. This is kind of a very tricky verse written all in one long line, so I'm not really sure how to do it, so we might just break it up into some slightly smaller chunks. Bhagavan api manuna
Bhagavanapi Manuna
Yatavad upakalpita pachitihi
Yatavad Upakalpita Pachitihi
Priyavrata Naradayor
Priyavrata Naradayo
Avishamam Abhishamikshmanayor Atmasam
Abhisamayoratmasam
Avastanam Avan Manasam
Avasthanam avan
Manasam
Kshayam Avyavahritam
ayam avyatam
Pravartayan Agamat
Pravartayan agamat.
Agama.
If anyone would like to have a go, please go for it. Bhagavan api manuna yatavat
Upakalpita
upakalpita pachiti priyavrata naradayor avishamam
Imam Shami
abhikshami
Shamanayor
kshmanayor atmasam
Atmasam
avasthanam
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 manasam kshayam
avani manasam
avyahritam
kshayam avyavritam
pravrittayan agamat.
pratyagamat.
Anyone online?
Bhagwan api manuna yathavat
Bhagavan
Bhagavan
api manuna yatavat
yatavat
upakalpita pachitihi
upakalpita
upakalpita
pachitihi
pachitihi
priyavrata nadayor abhisamam
priyavrata naradayor avishamam
abhisamiksha maneyor
abhishamikshmanayor
Atma
atma sam avasthanam avan
avastam avasthanam
avasthanam
avan manasam
Shayam avyartam pravartayam agamat.
Ribo
Shayam
Shayam vyavritam
avyavahritam
pravartayan agat.
pravartayan agamat. Bhagavan api manuna yatavat upakalpita
Upakalpita
pachitihi
pachitihi
priyavrata
priyavrata
naradayor
Naradayor
avishamam
avishamam
abhikshmanayor
abhikshmanayor
avastam
atmasam
avasthanam
avasthanam
avan
avan
manasam
manasam
kshayam
Shayam avyavritam
avyavahritam pravartayan
pravartayan
agamat.
agamat.
Bhagavan
Bhagavan
api
api
manuna
manuna
yatavat
yathavat
upakalpita
upakalpita pachitihi
pachitihi priyavrata
priyavrata
naradayor
Naradayor
avishamam abhishamikshmanayor
abhikshmanayor
atmasam
atmasam
avasthanam
avasthanam
avan manasam
Avanasam.
manasam
avyavritam pravartayan agamat.
pravartayan.
Okay, let's do the word-for-word translation. Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
the most powerful Lord Brahma,
the most powerful Lord Brahma,
Api,
Api,
also,
also,
also
Manuna,
Manuna,
Manuna
by Manu,
by Manu,
Manu
Yatavat,
Yathavat,
as deserved,
as
as
deserved,
deserved
Upakalpita,
Upakalpita,
Upakalpita
Apachitihi,
Apachitihi,
being
Apachitihi
worshipped,
being worshipped.
worshipped
Priyavrata Naradayoho,
Priyavrata
Priyavrata
Naradayo,
in the
Naradayo
presence of Priyavrata and Narada,
in the
in the
presence
presence
of
of Priyavrat and
Priyavrata and
Narad,
Narada
Avishamam,
Avishamam
Avishamam,
without aversion,
without
without
aversion,
aversion
Abhishamikshmanayoho,
Abhi Samikshamanayo,
Abhisamikshamanayo
looking on,
looking
looking
on,
on
Atmasam,
Atmasam,
Atmasam
just suitable for his position,
just
just
suitable
suitable
for
for
his
his
position,
position
Avasthanam,
Avasthanam
to
Avasthanam,
his abode,
to
to
his
his
abode
abode,
Avak Manasam,
Avak
Avak
Manasam,
Manasam
beyond the description of mind and words,
beyond
beyond
the
the
description
description
of
of
mind and
mind and
words,
words
Shayam, the
Shayam,
planet,
the
the
planet,
planet
Avyavahritam,
Avyavritam,
Avyavahritam
extraordinarily situated,
extraordinarily
extraordinarily
situated,
situated
pravartayan,
pravartayan,
departing,
departing,
agamat,
agamat,
returned.
returned.
Translation: Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu, who respectfully satisfied him as well as he could. Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma with no tinges of resentment. Having engaged Priyavrata in accepting his father's request, Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Satyaloka, which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words. Please repeat. Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu,
Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu,
who respectfully satisfied him as well as he could.
who respectfully satisfied him as well as he could.
Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma
Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma
with no tinges of resentment.
with no tinges of resentment.
Having engaged Priyavrata in accepting his father's request,
Having engaged Priyavrata in accepting his father's request,
Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Satyaloka,
Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Satyaloka,
which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words.
which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Manu was certainly very satisfied that Lord Brahma had persuaded his son Priyavrata to take the responsibility for ruling the world. Priyavrata and Narada were also very satisfied. Although Brahma had forced Priyavrata to accept the management of worldly affairs, thus breaking his vow to remain a brahmachari and completely engage in devotional service, Narada and Priyavrata did not look upon Brahma with resentment. Narada was not at all sorry that he had been frustrated in making Priyavrata a disciple. Both Priyavrata and Narada were exalted personalities who knew how to respect Lord Brahma. Therefore, instead of looking upon Brahma with resentment, they very feelingly offered him their respect. Lord Brahma then returned to his celestial abode known as Satyaloka, which is described here as being impeccable and being unapproachable by words. It is stated in this verse that Lord Brahma returned to his residence, which is as important as his own personality. Lord Brahma is the creator of this universe and the most exalted personality within it. His lifetime is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 17. Sahasra yuga paryantam aharyad brahmano vidu. The total duration of the 4 yugas is 4,300,000 years. And when that is multiplied 1,000 times, it equals 12 hours in the life of Brahma. Therefore, we cannot factually comprehend even 12 hours of Brahma's life, to say nothing of the 100 years that constitutes his entire lifetime. How then can we understand his abode? The Vedic literatures describe that in Satyaloka there is no birth, death, old age, or disease. In other words, since Satyaloka is situated next to Brahmaloka, or the Brahman effulgence, it is almost as good as Vaikuntha-loka. Lord Brahma's abode is practically indescribable from our present status. Therefore, it has been described as avan manasa gochara, or beyond the description of our words and the imagination of our minds. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verses 26 and 27, thus describes the abode of Lord Brahma. Yadvai paradyam tad parameshtyam na yatra soko na jara na mrityur nartir na kodvegaha. In Satyaloka, which is situated many millions and billions of years away, there is no lamentation, nor is there old age, death, anxiety, or the influence of enemies. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verses 26 and 27. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shivapam Sagatatam Sagana Raghunatam Mitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Mitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vishana Vishesha Sundari Pasatre Sasanane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're seeing here that Priyavrata is accepted the order of Lord Brahma, and it wasn't exactly Priyavrata's own plan, and it wasn't even the plan of Narada Muni, who Priyavrata was accepting as his guru. And Priyavrata is he's the oldest son of Swayambhuva Manu. Now, given the role that Swayambhuva Manu plays, it makes sense that Priyavrata, as the eldest son, was supposed to take on the responsibilities of his father and become a ruler and become a Prajapati, because this is still at the very beginning, the very early stages of the universe. But Priyavrata, even though he was supposed to become a ruler, and it was expected that he was going to become a ruler, he declined, and he wanted to be a renunciant. He wanted to be a sannyasi, renounce material world, and just focus his life on spiritual development. So, because he ended up choosing the path of being a renunciate, then instead of taking the position of being the ruler and taking on the responsibilities from his father, instead his younger brother Uttanapad took that responsibility. And so then Uttanapad, as we heard in the last canto, in Canto 4, we hear about Uttanapad, and then we hear about Dhruva Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, then Prachina Barishat, then the Prachetas, and then the Prachetas basically ended, the Prachetas essentially sort of ended the line of Uttanapad. So now, something needs to be done, and Lord Brahma is asking Priyavrata, who originally was the elder brother of Uttanapad, to now, okay, come back and take on the responsibility of being a ruler. But why did Priyavrata not want this position? Can anybody remember why Priyavrata refused initially to take on the position of taking on his father's responsibilities and being a ruler? Well, I mean, yeah, essentially, but Bhakti Yoga, you could also say, is, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Grihe tako bane tako, right? You sada hari bole tako, but that you can perform Bhakti Yoga in your house or in the forest as a renunciate. What's the difference? As long as you're chanting. So yeah, perhaps he wanted to perform Bhakti Yoga, but that can be done anywhere. But actually Priyavrata was quite intelligent, and he understood, and intelligence means you might be street smart, but when you can see past your own conditioning, when you can be aware of your own conditioning and be aware of your own potential to be illusioned and make mistakes, that's intelligence. Because you can see things that generally, like when we look at other people, it's very easy for us to see their faults, right? It's very easy for us to look at other people and say, oh, this guy is like this or that, or this person has a tendency to do things this way or that way. And I can see that, but it's much harder for us to see those same negative traits about ourselves. Generally, it takes someone else to tell us, and then usually our ego is hurt, and so we don't want to hear it, and so even if someone tells us, we might not really accept it anyway. But Priyavrata was quite intelligent, and he could understand the risks involved in taking up the position of rulership, because whatever we do in the material world, we have a tendency to take credit for it. We have this ego covers our intelligence, and we have a tendency to think that, you know, this is because of me that anything good has happened. And I think we can all relate to that. Even if we can't relate to it, even if we aren't as intelligent as Priyavrata and we can't relate to it ourselves because we're maybe not honest enough with ourselves, I'm sure we could all relate to it by judging other people, by judging that, oh yeah, this person, whenever they do anything, they love to take credit for it. Or they like to remind people how they were the one that did it, or, you know, it's because of them, or maybe they start getting a little bit more arrogant if something special happened, you know, that they were in charge of, or, you know, something like that. So Priyavrata knew that in the material world, we have this tendency to take credit for everything that happens, everything that we do. And he also understood that whatever action we perform in the material world entangles us more in karma. So the more you're performing action, the more you're getting bound up, karma bandhana, the more we become bound, bandhana, by karma. And now imagine being a king, being a great ruler of the world, the amount of action that you have to perform and the amount of bandhana, karma bandhana, the amount of karmic bondage that comes with the actions of a king. You're doing big stuff now. It's not just on a, you know, we're not talking micro level, we're talking macro scale now as a king of the world. So Priyavrata understood that there's a huge risk here of him becoming extremely bound up by karma from performing the activities of a great ruler. And because of that, when you're doing big things, especially in a big leadership position, and you have a lot of potential wins where people will praise you, and people will praise you a lot because either they're sucking up to you and they want your favor, or they'll praise you because, oh, look, because of you, this great thing happened, or under your leadership, these great things happened, or whatever. And because of that, it's almost impossible not to have a big false ego when you're in the position of a big leader. And Priyavrata was being pushed to be a very, very big leader, taking on from his father, of all people, like what to live up to, Swayambhuva Manu. So there's a huge risk that he understood was there, and he wanted to choose instead of the path of karma, which is going to bind him up, he wanted to choose the path of jnana, of knowledge. And so then Narada instructed him, actually, yes, you should take this path of jnana. And so Priyavrata wanted to accept Narada Muni as his spiritual master and follow and be trained up by Narada Muni in the path of jnana. But then Lord Brahma comes along and says, no, I want you to take the path of karma. So it's a bit of a conundrum that Priyavrata understands that he's going to get bound up by karma, so he wants to choose jnana, but then, you know, Lord Brahma comes along and says, no, choose karma. What a weird from his perspective, what a weird instruction that what are you sabotaging me? Like, why would you do this to me? For my spiritual health is going to be destroyed because of this. So now there's a conundrum that which one should he follow? Should he follow Narada Muni? Or should he, a very advanced, very great devotee? Or should he follow Lord Brahma, the first created being in the entire universe, the most senior person in the whole universe? Who should he follow? And sometimes in our devotional lives, sometimes in Krishna consciousness, we may come across a situation like this where we have two different spiritual authorities who are giving us different direction, and we have to figure out how to deal with that. And in those cases, when you have two legitimate spiritual authorities, both giving you legitimate spiritual direction, but it just so happens that both of those directions clash, how are we supposed to deal with that? And if you're really smart enough, or if you have the right guidance, the answer is actually to do both. Even though they may seem to clash, try to do both. So how do you do both karma and jnana? They seem like completely opposite paths. Well, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually says do both, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he instructs Arjuna. He doesn't instruct Arjuna to leave the battlefield and just take the path of only jnana. He says, no, perform your action, but action within knowledge. So in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 18, Krishna says, karmanya karmaya pasyed, akarmani cha karmaya, sabuddhiman manushyeshu, sayuktaha kritsna karma krit. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So real intelligence is to know how to understand inaction in action and action in inaction. Meaning that if we're performing action, but we are understanding that we are not the doer, we're not actually the one who is responsible for this action, right? Yat karoshi yadashnasi yajohosasi, that look, whatever we're doing, whatever actions we're doing, if we're doing it as an offering to Krishna, and we understand that we're not trying to take the credit for the action, we're acting without attachment, then there is inaction within action, because we're performing action, but we're not taking the credit for it. We're doing it as an offering, and we're not considering that we are even responsible for that action. We're simply considering that we are trying to serve the Lord. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that's real intelligence. And I just want to read Srila Prabhupada's purport to that verse. Srila Prabhupada says, a person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society, even though he is engaged in all sorts of activities for Krishna. Akarma means without reaction to work. The impersonalist ceases fruitive activities out of fear, so that the resultant action may not be a stumbling block on the path of self-realization. But the personalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Because everything is done for Krishna, he enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of his service. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sorts of reactionary elements of work. So, if we take the personalist performs karma within jnana, but the impersonalist performs jnana, trying to avoid karma. But because they are impersonal, because they are not trying to do it as an offering to the personality of Godhead, the Supreme Person, Krishna, because they're not doing that, they're just doing, the great, Brahman or whatever it is, great source of the universe, but they're not really considering it as a real person. And because of that, although they're taking the path of jnana, whatever they are forced to perform, even the smallest amount of action, and that action that they perform, they're responsible for the results of that action, as in they're responsible for experiencing the karmic responses to those actions, which means that whatever they're doing is binding them further in the material world, rather than performing action all for Krishna, which means whatever we eat, whatever we do, whatever we give away, whatever actions we're doing, although from an external perspective it looks like we are performing action within the material world, all of that action, if we have the mindset constantly, even when we're eating and cleaning up and washing the dishes at home, whatever little mundane things that we're doing, if we always have this attitude that I'm doing it all as an offering to Krishna because my life belongs to Krishna, then every little action that we perform is no longer generating additional karma that binds us to this whole process of samsara, of birth and rebirth. So it's a hack. It's a material world hack that we can still do everything, whereas the impersonalist will do seemingly practically nothing, yet they're being bound and we are not being bound. Now, Prabhupada in the purport also talks about Lord Brahma and his time, how long he lives, and if we think about that, then from Lord Brahma's perspective, and even greater than that, Lord Krishna's perspective. Now Brahma is a extremely elevated person. In this verse, Lord Brahma is referred to as what? Can anybody remember how Lord Brahma is referred to in this verse? Because the name Brahma isn't used in the verse. So how do we know that it's Brahma that we're talking about here? In the verse, it refers to Brahma in the very first word of the entire verse. It says Bhagavan. Now imagine that. Bhagavan is usually a term reserved for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reserved for God. But Lord Brahma is being referred to as Bhagavan, which is demonstrating how an exalted position that he has as the top person in this entire universe. So from Lord Brahma, or even greater from Lord Krishna's perspective, right and wrong is based on a much bigger scale and a much larger time scale. We see in a very micro level of what's right and what's wrong, based on very immediate reactions to things that happen. So if just like I think it's a Chinese story, that there was a man in a village, and he had a son, and his son had and his son was smart and strong, and so and handsome. So the people in the village, they all said to the father, "Oh, you're so lucky." And then the son, because this man was they came from a family of like farmers. So then the son, he was riding his horse and he fell off and he broke his leg. And he messed up his leg and he couldn't, so that means he couldn't work anymore. And in those days, it was a very big issue. If you're someone in your family can't do labor, you might not be able to do the harvest in time. It could have massive repercussions for your family's well-being. So then all the people in the village said, "Oh, you're so unlucky," to the father. "You're so unlucky, your son broke his leg." Then the government sent people out to the villages looking for people to join the army by force. They would take any strong and able young men and they would force them to join the army. So they came to the village and they took many young men, but they didn't take that man's son because he had a broken leg. So then all the people of the village said, "Oh, you're so lucky." Right? So from our perspective, what is good and what is bad changes so quickly. First he was lucky, then he was unlucky, then he was lucky again, then he was unlucky again. Like, pick your mind, like make up your mind. Which one is it? Because we're seeing from a very short time scale. But from Lord Brahma's perspective, That's why Prabhupada's pointing out that 4,300,000 years is, is all of the yugas, and then Sahasra Yuga Paryantam, you times that by 1,000, and that gets what? Only 12 hours for Lord Brahma. We can't even comprehend the kind of scale that he's looking from. So Lord Brahma is looking at the universe, and he has a particular purpose that he's trying to achieve. And so he's saying, Priyavrata, I want you to do this. And Priyavrata goes, hold on a second, you're messing up my whole spiritual life. Because he's looking at it from a smaller time scale than Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma's looking at it at a much bigger time scale. So sometimes when things happen to us, we should try and remember that from Krishna's perspective, at a much bigger time scale, what seems to be really bad luck or really unfortunate for us now may in the long run turn out to be something fantastic. We tend to be short-sighted and we judge quickly, but we do have a saying that hindsight is 20/20, right? That when we look back on things, we go, that thing that I thought was bad, now that some time has passed, now I look back on it and go, well, that was really good that happened. When we were doing the temple project here, I don't even know if I should say this on the recording, but anyway, we had done a design for the kitchen. And the kitchen design, we tried to design it professionally so that it was all going to be approved by the council, and that means that we would be able to legally, cook prasadam at mass scales and distribute it publicly or sell it or do anything. It's a proper commercial, recognized proper commercial kitchen. And then we got the quote, once we did all the designs and everything, and we got the quote for how much is that going to cost to actually build, and it was just over $1 million just for the kitchen. And we thought, oh no, this is how, we can't afford that. We can't afford $1 million just for the kitchen. So then we scrapped that entire plan, even though so much work had gone into it. We scrapped the entire plan and decided to scale back and do a much simpler kitchen, which might not be officially recognized by the council, but we figured that so far we were operating without an officially sanctioned commercial kitchen, so maybe we'll be okay. But there was a risk involved. So we thought, this is very unlucky. But then we thought, okay, look, then someone came along who said, actually, I can help you do that kind of makeshift kitchen that's a little bit less, it's not quite the standard that is required by the council, but it'll work and it'll be better than what we've had so far. So we thought, okay, now we're lucky. So we were unlucky and now we're lucky. And then as we were doing it, one of the contractors, so there's many different contractors, plumbers and electricians and different people. So one of the plumbers that was working on this job, he came along and he had a look at some of the plans and he goes, hold on a second, this is dodgy. This isn't proper, this isn't how the council would approve it. So he went straight to the council and complained to the council and said, they're not doing this properly. And why are they're trying to do this thing with some of the plumbing, and why are they doing it like that? The council goes, hold on, we don't even have a record that they're building a kitchen in the first place because we couldn't afford $1 million for a kitchen. And so then we panicked and we're like, oh, we're so unlucky. What are we going to do? Now the council is going to shut everything down. Because if no one told the council, they wouldn't have cared. But because he told the council, now they have to do something about it. So then we were, what are we going to do about this? But then the council has a look at the plans and says, hey, actually, these plans are pretty good. You can go ahead, make a few adjustments, but then, and so the adjustments cost a little bit more. But then they said, if you do these adjustments, go ahead, actually, it looks pretty good. And that basically is unheard of, that they just do like that. Usually just the application itself could take such a long time. And so then, now we're lucky again. And because of that, we now have a kitchen that is recognized, approved, and it's all council, is happy with it. It's all been signed off. And for a fraction of what it would have originally cost. So, we over the time of the project, we started to learn to see that Krishna's perspective, Gaunitai's perspective, is different from our perspective. It's much greater. It's unfathomably greater than our perspective. So many things happened. The 32, when we were at 32 Jennifer Street, we were trying to build a project at 58 Jennifer Street. And so much work and so much time and energy went into that project. And all of our hearts and minds were completely dedicated that we have to get this done, because otherwise we are at risk of having no temple and everything will be shut down. So there was immense pressure. And we worked, for a long time on this, and there were people who put in so much effort to get this done. And then when we finally got to the point, we had to get it to a point where we could make a final call. And to make a final call, we have to know the budget. And to get the budget, you have to have all kinds of plans so that you can go to tender and get a quote. You can't go to tender unless you've got, for a project like that, unless at least you've got some basic plans. So we had to do so much work, get so many council approvals, so many things, a few years of work just from our team, what to speak of all the teams before us who'd done many, many more years of work. And then finally we got to that point, and it turns out that it was going to cost an astronomical amount that was completely unrealistic. Beyond unrealistic. We were worried about a $1 million kitchen. This project was going to cost us $15 to $18 million if we did it at that time all at once. There was no way. We didn't have even $1 million. How were we supposed to do, almost $20 million? And we didn't know. It was like we were just completely devastated. We didn't know what we were going to do. It was terrible luck. And we looked for places everywhere. Eventually we decided we had to look for other places, which is a heartbreaking decision, because we really loved the idea of having a beautiful temple at 58 Jennifer Street. We really just were so committed to that. And then we had to come to terms with the fact that it's not going to be possible. We had to look elsewhere, and then we looked elsewhere, and there's nothing good available. Everybody was looking, there was nothing good available. And then we ended up in Ipswich Road, which really, let's be honest, it wasn't such a great facility. It did the job, and that was so difficult. And we're thinking, oh, this is terrible. We looked everywhere, we can't find anything. And then suddenly this place was found. And then suddenly all these other things started falling into position. So Krishna's perspective, Gaunitai's perspective, they have their plan, we have our plan. We're trying so hard to do all these different endeavors, and we don't realize that actually what Krishna's got his own plan and his own perspective. So Priyavrata, he had his own ideas. He's like, I'm going to go and be a renunciate, a sannyasi. What a better thing to do. Surely, wouldn't people say, oh, congratulations, what a wonderful choice. You're on the path back home, back to Godhead, spiritual path. Couldn't have possibly picked a better choice. Lord Brahma says, no, I want you to come back, family life, ruling, be a manager. Like, really? Because Lord Brahma had a bigger, much broader perspective. So, Lord Brahma, in this verse, it's talking about how Lord Brahma's abode, Satyaloka, is avan manasagochara, that is beyond words or mind or imagination. What to speak, this is Lord Brahma's abode, what to speak of Goloka Vrindavan, what to speak of Vaikuntha and Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world. If even Lord Brahma's abode is completely beyond our imagination even, then we can't imagine what Goloka Vrindavan must be like. So then why is Lord Brahma telling Priyavrata to take this decision or take this path of karma instead of the path of jnana? Well, what is it that was Brahma's perspective that was getting him to do this? Well, in hindsight, as we say, hindsight is 20/20. So now when we look back, we can see. So there's Lord Brahma, the first created being in the universe, and then his son Swayambhuva Manu, and Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Satarupa, they're the first human couple in the universe, and they have children who are the first generation of human beings, and 3 of their children become Manus, and then other sons of Priyavrata, right? So Priyavrata is the son of Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa. And Priyavrata, he has these 3 sons who become Manus, and he has a bunch of other sons who become the rulers of the Saptadweep, of the 7 planetary systems, and different areas around the world and of the universe. Saptadvip may also refer to, even different continents. So they basically become rulers of the world, the sons of Priyavrata. 7 of them, 3 of them become Manus, progenitors to populate the universe. And then some of their descendants of Priyavrata include great personalities like Rishabdev and Bharat Maharaj. Now imagine if Priyavrata had chosen never to get married and never to take on those responsibilities, then the world wouldn't have been properly populated in the way that we saw happened. So many great personalities came as a result of Priyavrata taking that path of karma as advised by Lord Brahma. And we see that then Priyavrata, his brother, Uttanapad, who was the father of Dhruva Maharaj, and then Priyavrata's siblings, he has a few sisters, Akuti, Prashuti, and Devahuti. So Akuti, she married Ruchi Prajapati, who was one of the key Prajapatis. Then Prashuti, Priyavrata's other sister, she married another Prajapati, very famous one, Daksha. And her daughter was Sati, amongst many other daughters. One of her daughters was Sati, who became the wife of Lord Shiva. And then the other sister of Priyavrata is Devahuti. And Devahuti married Kardama Muni. And Kardama Muni is another interesting, there's a correlation here between Priyavrata and Kardama Muni. So Priyavrata's sister, Devahuti, marries Kardama Muni, and Kardama Muni had been performing so many thousands of years of austerities and renunciation, but he got convinced to marry Devahuti, and even though he was a renunciate, but he said, okay, I'll do it, but under the condition that once we have had children to help populate the universe, I'm going to then leave my family life and go again back to being a renunciate. So he was similar to Priyavrata and Kardama Muni in that sense. Priyavrata wanted to be a renunciate, not a grihasta. Kardama Muni also wanted to be a renunciate, not a grihasta. Whenever I hear about Kardama Muni, I always remember Jamuna Mataji comparing Kardama Muni to Jason Momoa, a famous actor, because Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was describing Kardama Muni as, darker complexion, big, super strong, big hair, and she said, oh, it reminds me of Jason Momoa. So Kardama Muni has that similar, he was in a similar predicament to Priyavrata. And then, of course, Devahuti and Kardama Muni, their son was Lord Kapiladev. So if Priyavrata did not extend his lineage, then Lord Brahma's plan for populating the universe, which was not actually his plan, it was instructions from from Mahavishnu himself, that plan wouldn't have happened. Or, sorry, the plan of Lord Vishnu wouldn't have happened. And so Lord Brahma is therefore giving these instructions to Priyavrata. So then the question comes that, okay, then what ultimately is true perfection? What is truly the perfect achievement that we can get in the material world? Because usually we would think focusing our whole life on spiritual life is the highest perfection. Or from a material perspective, you might say, well, the best perfection you can have is to have the highest position. So then what is the highest position? Is it to be a king or to be a great ruler like Priyavrata? Or the highest position you could say then is Lord Brahma in the universe? So would that be the topmost perfection, to get the position of Lord Brahma? And it reminds me of that story of the Punarmusika Bhava, that there's a mouse who is being tormented by a cat, and so he goes to a sage and he asks the sage for help, and the sage says, what do you want? And he said, I'm being chased by this cat, I need help. So sage says, what do you want? They say, well, make me a cat too, so then I don't have to fear the cat. So he says, okay, fine, so now you're a cat. Then the cat's getting chased by the dog, and then he comes back to the sage, says, okay, now what do you want? It's like, make me a dog, because the dog is chasing me, so make me a dog. So it becomes a dog, and eventually, it goes on and on. Eventually, he says, make me a lion or a tiger, make me a tiger, because otherwise, all these other animals, tiger, lion, king of the jungle, then I won't have to fear anyone. So then the sage says, okay. So he makes him a tiger, and then the tiger says, oh, this sage, you look mighty tasty. Let me, maybe I'll jump on you and eat you up and have a meal out of you. So the sage goes, Punar Musika Bhava, become a mouse again. So the reality is that no matter what position we get in this world, whether it be the position of a king or ruler, Lord Brahma, whatever that position is, every position in the material world has trouble. Even Lord Brahma, we've heard multiple stories. We've heard multiple stories about Lord Brahma having some troubles. Whether it's the Brahma Vimoha Leela, whether it's Lord Brahma, anyway, there's a lot of things we don't have to mention. Lord Brahma is a great personality, but he had troubles. So every position in the material world has troubles. That's why this mouse was not satisfied when he became a tiger. He wanted to take the position of his guru. I'll get a higher position. I will eat you up, and I will now be the top. So the counterintuitive answer is that instead of trying to climb the ladder, instead we should be going the other way, trying to become lower, not higher in the material world. That's the counterintuitive answer. Become lower, become the servant. Lord Chaitanya says, Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayo Dasa Dasa Anudasa. We follow in the footsteps of the gopis and we become the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. That is the ultimate perfection. Because what is our constitutional position? What is the jiva's constitutional position? Jivara Swarupa hoy? What? Krishna Nitya Das. That the jiva's Swarup, Jivara Swarupa hoy, Krishna Nitya Das, is to be eternally the servant of Krishna. That's our constitutional position. So the ultimate perfection, the best position that we can possibly aim for, is to get back to our original position that Krishna has given us. And the key here, one of the keys is given in the verse of Avishamam, that Priyavrata and Narada Muni, because they both had plans for Priyavrata, they accepted this understanding, Avishamam, without any resentment, without aversion, without holding. Imagine if you had worked on some plans for so long and then someone just absolutely trashes your plans and tells you to do something completely different and forces you essentially to do something completely different. Generally, most of us would hold some resentment to whoever did that to us. Some resentment if someone, fired us and forced us to rethink our life plan, if somebody sabotaged whatever project we were doing, we would hold resentment towards those people who did that to us. But Priyavrata and Narada Muni set that example of Avishamam. They didn't hold any resentment. They instead gave great respect and love to Lord Brahma. Even though Brahma was breaking Priyavrata's vow, Brahma was forcing Priyavrata to break his vow of being a brahmachari, and he completely frustrated Lord Narada Muni's plan to train Priyavrata as like a full-time disciple, but still Narada Muni and Priyavrata both held no resentment to Lord Brahma. They recognized Lord Brahma's superior position, and they could see that the Lord was working through the instructions of Lord Brahma. They could see that Krishna's plan was coming through the instructions of Lord Brahma, and they understood this authority of Lord Brahma and they respected it, even above their own spiritual preferences. Even though they had their own ideas, their own plans, they still respected Lord Brahma's instruction above that. Sometimes in our spiritual lives, we have our own plans, and then we get an instruction that tells us something different, and we have to have this idea of surrender to Krishna, that even if things are going not the way that we planned, if Krishna pushes us in a certain direction, then we should try to accept that as Krishna's plan and Krishna's instruction, even though that might be going against what we think is best for us. Anyway, any questions or comments or additions or corrections? I don't know, what do we think? Should Priyavrata have stayed a sannyasi or?
then he would have disobeyed the instructions of his grandfather or his guru.
Mm.
And that would have been not in a favor of what he was trying to achieve.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think he had to obey the instructions given by his guru, and there was no other alternative. I don't see that as an alternative.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, essentially, he'd be doing kind of guru aparad, essentially. And and even though Narada Muni was also his guru, so then you say, well, if he disobeys Narada Muni's instructions, then wouldn't he also be doing guru aparad? But do you know our parampara? What's the beginning of our parampara? How does it start? What are the first 3 or 4 people in our parampara? We have Krishna, then? Who comes after Krishna? Brahma? Who comes after Brahma? Narada? Who comes after Narada? Vyas. Yeah, Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyas, right? So Narada Muni is the disciple of Lord Brahma. So if Brahma gives an instruction to Priyavrata, the disciple of Narada Muni is the guru of Priyavrata, but he's also the disciple of Lord Brahma. So ultimately, if Narada Muni disobeys Brahma, he's committing guru aparad. So Narada Muni has to follow the instructions of Brahma, and therefore Priyavrata can disobey the original instruction of Narada Muni and follow the instruction of Brahma without committing guru aparad.
Also respecting that Brahmaji is his grandfather. Yeah, maybe that also.
Yeah, Lord Brahma is the grandfather. So yeah, but this is also the very beginning of the universe. So there were not that much. There wasn't such a high population in the universe at that time, but compared to now, there was a lot. But compared to now, it was still many of the descendants were still coming. So it was essentially there were a few generations had happened, and so Lord Brahma is the grandfather, but also the guru. So it's not like they had many other, they would have had not many other choices for gurus. But also traditionally, generally, because there are different types of guru. There's the initiating guru and there's also the shiksha guru. And in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we put more emphasis on the shiksha guru than the diksha guru. We should be. In ISKCON, it's slowly has gone the other way, where nowadays a lot of the emphasis is on the diksha guru. But in Lord Chaitanya's line, generally the emphasis is on the shiksha. And sometimes the diksha is also the shiksha, which is the case a lot of the time in ISKCON as well, which is why perhaps this has happened. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because in this particular context, generally the diksha guru, traditionally, not always, but very often, the diksha guru would be the father. They would perform the ritual and give them the diksha. So yeah, in one sense, grandfather, another sense, guru. Yeah, anything else? Anyone online?
Hare Krishna, Janardan Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you very
Krishna.
much. Thank you very much for your class. I just have one question. The question is, how do we know what is Krishna's plan? We make plans ourselves. We think our plan is the one which is the best one. But how to differentiate Krishna's plan?
Yeah, this is a question that a lot of people, a lot of devotees always have the same question. Myself included. I sometimes, often I ask Krishna, I ask Gornitai, what is your plan? Because I don't know. I don't know what to do, and I need some help. And it's quite difficult to know what Krishna's plan is, but there is a formula that is usually the formula that works. Generally, if we are able to follow this formula, it would work. And that formula is a 3-part combination of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So if our Guru is saying that this is correct, if senior sadhus are telling us that this is correct, and if Shastra confirms what both of them have said, then we know. Of course, sometimes in very, very specific situations, it's hard to find an exact specific example, and sometimes people can cherry pick from Prabhupada's teachings and pick one particular point and say, see, Prabhupada said we can do this, even though they've not understood the context in which Prabhupada said it. But generally, if we follow that formula of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we can. But personally, what I've found that has helped me to have some peace with dealing with these questions is very desperate prayer to Krishna, very regular and desperate prayer, asking him to help you and asking him to guide you, and not only guide you, but also guide the others around you as Chaitya Guru. That please, Krishna, guide all of us as Chaitya Guru, as the Lord within our hearts. Please guide all of us to do the right thing, because none of us really know what the right thing is. We all are trying to please you, but we need your help because we can't do anything on our own. And I think a lot of very genuine and very deep prayer on a regular basis, that has helped over years and years of doing that. That's kind of helped a bit in becoming, or trying to become, a little bit more in tune with what Krishna's plan is, so that instead of swimming against the current, you kind of just go with the flow a little bit. You still don't know what Krishna's plan is, but you try to learn how to go with the flow of things that are happening, and without being so attached to whether it goes this way or that way. And if you do that with deep prayer and by trying to follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then I think generally you'll be able to do the right thing. And even if you don't do the right thing, again, we are only looking at right and wrong from a very small time scale, a very small perspective. So even if we make some mistake, that's okay, as long as we be somewhat detached from that mistake. Don't beat ourselves too much up about it. Just pick ourselves up and keep going. No matter what happens, just keep going and keep going. I think that's the key, is consistent determination. That we might make mistakes, and we might think that I tried to follow Guru and Sadhu and Shastra and I still made a mistake. Okay, fine. Pick yourself up and keep going.
Thank you very much, Janardan Prabhu. Thank you very much. Another question I have.
Yeah.
Now, we see that, there are devotees who will cultivate some new people. And then what happens that they call themselves their Shiksha Gurus. And the thing is that Shiksha Guru's responsibility is really very important. And we cannot call everybody who cultivates one devotee that he is a Shiksha Guru. So there is a lot of people. And then what happens? They become Shiksha Guru, they cultivate somebody, and then they become their gurus. And lead them accordingly, according to their own desires. And, that's what they become. But this is a great responsibility. We should understand what actually Shiksha Guru is. So
Yeah.
you have some comment on that?
Yeah, this is a very good point. You've raised a very good point, and this is a common misunderstanding amongst devotees, is the role of Shiksha Guru and who is a Shiksha Guru. And a Shiksha Guru, see, when we say Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, right, that trifecta combination of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, we got to remember the Sadhu part of that. We have Guru, we have Sadhu, and we have Shastra. So that means we take guidance from sadhus. It doesn't mean that that sadhu is our official Shiksha Guru. Otherwise, it would only be Guru and Shastra. There would be no sadhu. It would just be Guru and Shastra. But no, we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So although we get some training and we get some instruction and some guidance and some mentorship from sadhus, and we follow the example of sadhus, it doesn't necessarily mean that every sadhu is our Shiksha Guru, and everyone who gives us some instruction is our Shiksha Guru. Within our heart, we need to very strongly accept somebody as our Shiksha Guru. Krishna Das Kaviraj, at the end of every chapter in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's praying to Rupa and Raghunath. So he's praying to his gurus. So he had, do you think Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami didn't have so many other sadhus around? There were so many other very, very advanced Vaishnavas around. But they were not his guru. They may have given him instruction, he may have taken example from them, but it doesn't mean that they were his Shiksha Guru. They were advanced sadhus that he would pay respects to and that he glorified a lot throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But at the end of every chapter, he very specifically calls out Rupa and Raghunath. So we should understand the difference between a sadhu and Shiksha Guru. And we should also be very careful about people who try to force themselves into a position of being our Shiksha Guru. Because people who are trying to become our Guru oftentimes have ulterior motivations. And just like the Punar Musika Bhava story, that the mouse became a cat, became a dog, became a tiger, and then that tiger decided, I'm going to take the position of my guru now, and I'll eat him up, I'll kill him, and then I'll become the top. So then the guru said, Punar Musika Bhava, right? Become a mouse again. So we have to be very careful about the intentions of people who are trying to make themselves our Shiksha Guru, or trying to establish themselves as the big Shiksha Guru in the local area, because some people have what is called we call in ISKCON the Guru disease, that they have this desperate desire to be a Guru, because they have, unfortunately, they have this this desire for puja and pratishta. And Lord Chaitanya talks about this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and very heavily warns us against the desire for puja pratishta, the very heavy warning against a desire for prestige, a desire for worship and respect from other people. If we have a desire for this, it's going to destroy our bhakti lata. And also with kutinati, too much diplomacy, too much trickery, trying to, set things up in a way that it will be of benefit to me. And so there are some devotees who have this disease, this guru disease, and they want to establish themselves as guru, and they declare themselves as guru, but as a result, they are destroying their own bhakti lata, and they're also destroying the bhakti lata of the people who are following them. So it's very important that we stick to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is our Shiksha Guru, but we can also have other Shiksha Gurus. Generally, we keep maybe one or two or three, Shiksha Gurus, not so many. So I guess coming back to your point that you raise, a very legitimate point, an issue that we have amongst devotees, is that just because somebody is instructing you or giving you some guidance doesn't necessarily mean that they are your Shiksha Guru.
Thank you very much, Janardan. I think we as devotees and new devotees coming into Krishna consciousness, they have to be very cautious of, and the point here is to follow Srila Prabhupada's instruction if you are not having a guru, Diksha Guru. to make sure that you are not caught up in this, the Shiksha Gurus who are actually for their own desires that they are guiding you. So, that's what we have to be very, very careful. Thank you very much for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Marji. Thanks for raising those great points. Yeah. Any other comments before we finish up?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dhanavad. Prabhuji, just going back to the
Hare
first
Krishna.
question that was there, in my understanding, actually there is no difference in the instruction that is being given by Brahma or Narada. Both of them are asking Priyavrata to engage in devotional service. The methodology by which you engage in devotional service may appear to be different, but the engagement in devotional service is still the same instruction that is being given by both. Yes, you may engage in devotional service according to Narada, going to the forest, doing your meditation, doing thing which was right. But here also, engage in devotional service, but still perform the activity of being the ruler of the universe. So the ultimate effect of both of their instructions is the same. The methodology may be slightly different. So in essence, I don't feel that there is a difference in instruction, but how it is to be executed may be different. Your comments, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point, Madhavi Prabhu. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. The ultimate instruction was the same, or the goal of both instructions was the same, but as you rightly pointed out, the methodology was, I wouldn't say slightly different, I would say the methodology was completely different. One is a full sannyasi and one is full grihastha ruler. So the methodologies were very different, but as you pointed out, the ultimate goal of both was the same, was to serve Krishna. But from a practical perspective, we can say the same thing about any instructions we're receiving within ISKCON, for example. Someone might say, do this service, some might say, do that service. Essentially, both of them are service and both of them are designed to please Krishna, but we sometimes have questions about which one should I follow?
Absolutely. I'm not saying that we will not have questions or we will not have what to give priority when. That might still happen, and that needs the consultation, both maybe with the person who's giving instruction or with others, and try and work out that priority and do it. But because it is not as though Brahma is asking to give up that original goal and say, you give that up totally and you come and become a grahastha and become materialistic. That wasn't the instruction that Brahma was giving. And
yeah, absolutely.
So from that perspective, that is not there, because the thing is that every instruction comes with a time, place, circumstance. So here, the way in which I have always taken this to be is, yes, Brahma was asking him to do something different, but given the fact, as you were previously saying, there's very few people, and perhaps Priyavrata was the most qualified to taking up that role of being the ruler, providing the guidance for everybody so that the whole world actually moves forward in that path of Krishna consciousness, giving the right direction. And so he wanted to place him in that position so that he would do it. So therefore, I see that in that perspective. Again, there can be many perspectives. It's just something that I thought that was there. That's all.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, look, sorry?
No. Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, you raised another good point, which is about the context. The context is always very important, and generally the guru will be guiding the disciple according to their particular context. And so they may give one instruction to one person and another instruction to another person. That will be based on the context of that individual. And it just reminds me of a story about I can't remember who it was, but there's a saint, and he meets different people, and one person is a very rich man who's enjoying a lot of wealth, and he says, may you live for a long time. And then he meets like a yogi who's done a lot of austerity and all that, and he says, may you die immediately. Then he meets a butcher and he says, may you neither live or die. And then he meets a devotee and he says, may you live or die, up to you, doesn't matter. So why? Because the person enjoying all that wealth, he said, well, he's using up all of his good karma. After this life, then he's going to have to experience, the bad side of things. Right now, he's experiencing the good karma. So may you live as long as possible. You delay that bad reaction. And then the yogi, it's like he was living such an austere life, but he's gained so much punya from that may you die immediately so you can go and start enjoying the benefits of all of that hard work. The butcher, may you neither live or die, because like if you live, your life is abominable, and if you die, you're going to suffer like anything with hellish reactions. So whether you live or you die, it's bad. But with a devotee, whether you live or you die, it's good. You're living in Krishna consciousness. If you die, you'll also be in Krishna consciousness. Either way, it's fantastic. And another point that I was thinking about, Madhavi Prabhu, was the principle of Niyamagraha by Rupa Goswami is that that this scenario with Lord Brahma and Narada Muni and Priyavrata is kind of giving us a bit of an idea about this Niyamagraha, or not being over-obsessed with the rules and the regulations, but also not completely neglecting them, but rather, as Madhavi Prabhu was rightly pointing out, but rather we should understand what is the ultimate purpose behind the rules. Otherwise, we become overly obsessed, like smartas, that we become overly obsessed with the rules, and we become so obsessed with the rules that we forget what the purpose of the rules are in the first place. And so the purpose of all the rules, the purpose of everything that we do, the purpose of all services is samsiddhim haritoshanam, is we're just trying to please Krishna. And so at the end of the day, if that's what we're achieving, then it's successful. Doesn't matter if we do this way or that way. But yeah, thank you for your points, Madhavi Prabhu. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just one small thing about the last question that was there. I think the biggest thing that we can do for newcomers is to engage them in proper education. If we educate them properly and give them the right guidance alongside that, I think then it helps them through the Krishna consciousness so that they can look at things, because a lot of times otherwise this aspect of when we say Guru Sadhu Shastra, they don't have the Shastra backing that they need to have. So they find it difficult when they just only have two of the three. And that's, I think, is important for us to have as well. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I've noticed that a lot myself, that when I grew up in ISKCON as a kid, when I was a kid, the way that ISKCON operated was quite different to the way that it operates now. Almost all of the new devotees would join an ashram, or the children would be born into the movement and they would be trained up in gurukuls, so they would receive training, from birth. And people who joined, they would join either a brahmachari or a brahmacharini ashram as a celibate male or a celibate female as a student, and they would be trained up in the system, and then they would leave the ashram. But now, but that's mostly because it was more non-Hindu background people. It was Westerners all over the world that were joining. But now that it's mostly Hindu background people that are joining, they're joining at later stages in life. They're joining when they've already had their education, they've already got had marriage and children, and they don't have the time to join an ashram. So now we have devotees who may have been in Krishna consciousness even for 20 years and maybe even Brahman initiated, but they still have not actually received some of the fundamental training. And so oftentimes we see that devotees still have misunderstandings about not only the philosophy but also Prabhupada's mood. So yeah, it's a very, I don't know what the answer is, because it's very difficult to get that much training while maintaining your livelihood and your family, but it's certainly a big necessity. I agree with you, Madhavi Prabhu. Anyway.
Thank you, Prabhu. Sorry for extending the session, but I thought it's...
No, that's absolutely, for me, it's fine. I apologize to everybody else, but I enjoy the conversation. I appreciate your points, Prabhu. And to everybody else, I apologize for going significantly over time. I will work in the future on keeping it shorter. But thank you all for tolerating. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Grace Janardan Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Jai Srila.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.